Hey there everyone, I'm Chief Meteorologist Monica Cortez. As we near the winter months and below freezing temperatures, we could be looking at some frozen precipitation like snow. But before we get to all of that, we must first explore how we get to such conditions. Welcome to our winter special, The Chill Out, what winter in the Borderland will bring. We're going to cover everything from how to prepare for freezing weather, protecting your home from cold snaps, and answering the time-old question, will we have a white Christmas this year? So let's get started. I know that by now many of you have seen this little book, The Old Farmer's Almanac, and in it you can find all sorts of long-range forecasts in an attempt to help you better prepare for oncoming weather. Here's how it works. We must first understand that there are two sets, the Old Farmer's Almanac and the Farmer's Almanac. They both use different methods when forecasting. The Old Farmer's Almanac uses solar activity, prevailing wind patterns, and some meteorology. The Farmer's Almanac uses a mathematical and astronomical formula that includes the solar and lunar activity, but no meteorology. Here's Jason Laney with the National Weather Service in El Paso to help answer if these methods are actually accurate.
The downside to this primarily is the fact that we're forecasting for very large regions. And they're also making this forecast about 18 months in advance because it takes time to get it all to press and out to the store shelves. So that's going to cause them a little problem. But the region that includes us in El Paso also includes Denver and the Central Rocky Mountains. And so it's impossible to clarify the weather in Denver as being the same as in El Paso.
And while both almanacs claim to be about 80% accurate, studies have actually shown it only to be 50% accurate. So basically as accurate as flipping a coin. Heads it's going to snow in El Paso, tails it will not. But meteorologists at the National Weather Service have a much different approach to their forecasting. In fact, as your local weather authority, we not only want to provide you with the forecast you need to better prepare for the week, we also want to take that extra step to make sure you understand how we're able to put our 9-day forecast together. So we take you to Santa Teresa to visit our partners at the National Weather Service for how it's done.
And we're ready to inflate the balloon.
This is a weather balloon. Filled with 1,400 grams per square inch of hydrogen, it's launched twice a day nearly 100,000 feet into the air. Info is then stored on an instrument called a radiosonde.
Our instrument weighs about 1 to 2 pounds, so it's pretty light. So this is usually sufficient. And get the instrument back down to the surface.
Once everything is tied and secured, it's time to launch. As the balloon elevates, meteorologists begin to monitor and track data in real time.
This red line indicates temperature and this green line indicates moisture. And basically, what we're looking at is a picture of the atmosphere. At the bottom is the surface, and this balloon will fly up through the atmosphere and measure moisture, temperature, and wind speed as it flies up.
What's collected is then shared with KTSM 9 News. Your weather authority team breaks down that data so it's easy for everyone to understand. The weather balloon is also key to helping meteorologists at the National Weather Service know when to issue weather warnings.
We're able to see how much moisture exists, what the wind profiles are, and how strong thunderstorms are going to be tomorrow afternoon or a few afternoons later. We're able to see thunderstorm strength and the type of thunderstorms that we should expect.
A lot of science goes into forecasting your next 9 days, but it's done to keep us safe from possible weather threats. As the saying goes, teamwork makes the dream work. Of course, with any weather forecast, always know that the further you go into the future, the murkier it becomes in seeing the dynamics and how the atmosphere will behave, especially if we have oncoming weather. Now, the best way that I can explain the long-range forecast is through this drawing of a horse. Now, bear with me as we explore this a little more, shall we? All right, so the first 3 days, computer model runs are able to nail down the details quite nicely, quite accurately, and and you'll see all the nice fine details in it. And this is days 1 through 3. We're able to pinpoint the timing of the storm, how much rain is expected out of that thunderstorm. Once we make our way into days 4 through 6, the model runs now have old information. They're trying to stretch further out, so the details are not quite there. You still kind of understand the idea that the storm is coming. We just don't really know how much rain is expected and the exact timing to it. Now, days 7 through 9, models are really lacking information, so the data coming out is not accurate. I mean, we still know it's a horse, right? We still know it's there. We just don't really know how much moisture, with the timing of the thunderstorm, but it does serve to help us better plan out 9 days out. Well, having said that, we all know that there are 4 different seasons, right? We experience every year: spring, summer, fall, and winter. But did you know that there are astronomical seasons and meteorological seasons? Forecaster Selena Quintana shares what those differences are.
The 4 seasons the majority of us are familiar with, believe it or not, are the ones marked on our calendars, which are astronomical, but there's misconceptions people have about them, often confusing them with certain characteristics with meteorological seasons. But before we get into that, let's talk about the perihelion.
So perihelion and aphelion, they refer to the distance that the Earth is from its sun in its cycle around. Obviously, we know that the Earth revolves around the sun, but it's not a perfect circle. It's actually a bit of an ellipse, or almost egg-shaped if you want to think of it that way.
The shape that gives you the 2 days when we're in the farthest from the sun and the nearest, the closest being the perihelion and the farthest being the aphelion. But get this, in the winter, the sun is the closest, and when we're the farthest, the summer.
So it turns out that in our hottest time of the year, which is early July, that's when we're actually farthest away from the sun. The flip side of that, early January, which is typically when we're coldest, that's when we're closest to the sun.
But that's not what determines our seasons. What matters isn't the distance, but the tilt of the Earth towards the sun. Those are known as solstices. They mark the start of winter and summer, and the equinoxes, beginning the start of fall and spring.
During our summer months, when we're tilted towards the sun, it's like the light energy is more intense, it's more direct. And in the wintertime, when we're tilted away, that energy is more spread out, more indirect, and obviously not as effective to heat us up.
So although astronomical seasons are more traditional, meteorologists believe their own seasons work better.
Instead of waiting for June 21st to be the first day of summer, meteorologically summer is June, July, and August. Obviously, we do the same thing for winter. We don't wait until late December for the actual solstice to take place. December, January, February. That's winter to those of us in the meteorological community.
So who takes the win in astronomical seasons versus meteorological seasons? Our meteorological seasons show to be more accurate when data comes into play. Reporting in the studio, Selena Quintana, KTSM 9 News.
And we usually know when winter is starting to approach, right? As our days get shorter and our nights get longer. It's also around this time that we get ready to fall back 1 hour in order to make the most of the shorter days. Selena Quintana continues our coverage and explains if daylight saving time is really still relevant in today.
Turning back the clock, something most Americans do near the end of fall. But does it really save energy?
People say, no, we don't. The days are the same length whether you set the clock ahead or not. That's true, but it's how we react as a society. People tend to stay up later as opposed to waking up earlier. So even though they don't have as much sunshine in the morning, by having that extra hour later in the day when people are awake and moving about, allows them an extra hour of productivity. And I believe that is the key to why we'll keep seeing daylight savings time.
The key that has Texas legislators continuing to vote against getting rid of daylight saving time and having a standard time. Earlier this year, the Texas House voted 133-9 against State Reps Lyle Larson's bill to get rid of the time change. Larson saying, quote, "I'm tired of changing the clocks twice a year," during a hearing at the Texas Capitol. But the bill would have to require Congress to amend federal law, allowing states to shift standard times permanently. And although some don't believe it's energy saving, it does help productivity.
It goes back to the farmers. It gives them an extra hour in the field. They don't want to be out plowing the field in the morning when it's still kind of chilly, but late afternoon when the weather is nice, that's an extra hour of work that they can get done.
There are two states that have successfully killed the time switch, Arizona and Hawaii. New Mexico is still in the works of hoping to do the same thing, and until then, we'll keep springing forward and falling back 1 hour. Reporting in the studio, Selena Quintana, KTSM 9 News.
Don't go anywhere, we're still answering that question. Will we have snow this year? We'll be right back after this. Well, the monsoon in El Paso ended in September, but the severe weather didn't stop there. In fact, October tends to produce more severe weather like hailstorms in our region. It's actually before and after the monsoon, May and October, when our atmosphere is better suited for severe weather. The reason? Well, it all has to do with the jet stream. Think of this weather feature as what separates the cool air from the warm air. This also tends to produce some pretty strong winds in the upper part of the atmosphere, which is exactly what we need for severe weather to form.
During the monsoon and during the summer months especially, the jet stream retreats far north of us, so the winds, say at 20,000 feet, are light, only around 5 or sometimes 10 miles an hour. Because of that, any severe weather we get is usually very localized and short-lived.
So during the cooler months like October, the jet stream dips further south, bringing in that cooler air, and the winds tend to get stronger in the upper atmosphere as well, in turn intensifying our thunderstorms, producing the possibility of hail. Now, the largest hailstone to be documented in the Sun City was back in September 2009. It was the size of a tennis ball, which is roughly about 2.5 inches in diameter. Now, more recently, we have seen golf ball-sized hail across El Paso, and in fact, there has been a trend that the National Weather Service has noticed throughout recent years.
We've noticed over the last 20 years our hail is getting larger, and that may be due to climate change, and also we have more people to observe the weather.
Says golf ball size hail is now a lot more common for the El Paso and Juarez area. Now, with bigger sized hail, the risk of hail damage to your property increases. Insurance agent Sandra Serna says Texas ranks #2 in the nation when it comes to hail damage. In fact, just last year alone, Texas totaled $90 million in claims to vehicles and about $346 million in claims to home repairs from hail damage.
Document, take pictures, especially if you have a crack on your windshield that is right in your line sight. You don't want to drive the vehicle, especially to the claims office. We will come to you.
Serna says one thing you should do during a hailstorm is to stay away from windows and skylights, as she has seen situations where those have shattered, injuring people. Well, another weather phenomena we see during the fall season and sometimes during the winter is what you'd call radiation fog. You usually see fog over the mountain areas in El Paso. You see it as clouds cascading down the mountain slope, and other times you'll see it over the city. It forms overnight as the air near the ground cools and stabilizes. When this cooling process causes air to reach saturation, fog will form.
Fog is really nothing more than a cloud that is covering the ground. If you look in the sky and see a cloud, well, all fog is that cloud so low it's covering the ground.
So during the fall months, we can still get to see a good amount of rain, which could then lead to fog in the morning. So the next time you step outside and see fog, don't forget to snap those photos and videos and send them our way for a chance to be featured on KTSM 9 News, and of course, to become a weather watcher. All you have to do is send them over to our social media platforms or email news@ktsm.com. We'll have that answer of how to winterize your home and what about snow right after this. With freezing temperatures right around the corner, now is a good time to start preparing your home for the change in weather. KTSM 9 News forecaster Jessica Nevares explains how doing this early can actually help you save money.
It's never too late in the season to winterize your home, and it's as easy as walking to your front door. Because there's more to just protecting what's outside in the elements, experts say inside is just as important.
People don't realize the damage that freezing temperatures can do.
32 degrees is considered below freezing, and we typically see freezing overnight lows starting in November.
Many portions of the city actually tend to see their first freeze about a week or so before we see the official number at the airport.
Jason Laney with the National Weather Service says although climate forecasts predict an above-average winter, it's still important to be prepared because cold snaps are always a possibility during our winter season.
Keep in mind, those are climate forecasts. That's long term. When you average all the days together, I still expect us to have several points in between where it gets fairly cold.
That's why during the winter, you want to keep the 3 Ps in mind so that your pets, pipes, and plants are all protected. Speaking of pets, don't forget to check the weather stripping around your house.
I know I have a little puppy at home and he likes to scratch at the door when he wants to go out. Come wintertime, that weather stripping's been scratched away and needs to be replaced.
Sealing your doors and windows will insulate heat, which could lower your gas bill and help keep unwanted critters from getting into your home.
The rodents are looking for warmth. They're, from the elements. They're trying to protect them from the elements, and it's nice and cozy inside your home, so they're going to look away in.
Pest control experts recommend cleaning your house regularly to avoid rodents from hiding and reproducing, sealing all the gaps that could be easy entrances into your home, and getting rid of any standing water around your yard or house.
Once they're established in your home, by the time you find out they're there, it's harder and it's more expensive to get rid of them.
Pest control experts say letting professionals help you from the get-go could save you money in the long run, but more importantly, it keeps you and your family safe. Reporting in the studio, Jessica Navarez, KTSM 9 News.
And not only is it important to winterize your home, but it's also just as important to winterize your car. Make sure your car is prepared for the temperature drop can help keep you and your family safe. KTSM 9 forecaster Jessica Navarez continues our coverage and shares some safety tips to keep in mind this winter season.
When preparing for freezing temperatures, you'll want to remember to prep your car, especially the tires, because cooler temperatures can fluctuate the air pressure in them. If you notice the tire pressure light pop up more frequently during the winter, it may not necessarily mean they need air, but it's still something to keep an eye on because
you want to make sure you're able to grip, you don't slide in the snow, and you got to check the tread on your tires, make sure you have good tread on them.
You can check your tire pressure with a tire pressure gauge like this one. Just make sure your PSI or pounds per square unit is at 28 or higher.
You should also check your car's antifreeze level. This helps keep the radiator from freezing. You'll want to do this sooner rather than later, according to the National Weather Service.
If we plan to get from point A to point B, the time to make sure that that service is done is before the freeze hits.
Everything nowadays has plastic, so it cracks in the winter when the water freezes.
During the winter, gas lines in your car can freeze. To avoid that, all you have to do is make sure to fill up at the pump and try to keep at least half a tank of gas in your car at all times. If you were ever in doubt, it's recommended to get a professional's help and not try to fix the problem yourself.
Here at the shop, we can help you get your car ready for the winter.
If you're unsure to what services the make or model of your car might need, you can call the dealership to make sure you stay safe while on the roads this winter. Jessica Navarez, KTSM 9 News.
All right, we have an outlook to your winter season, and the time-old question is snow in your forecast this Christmas. We'll be right back. So we just learned how to prepare for freezing months, what weather threats we face in fall and winter. Now we move on to our winter outlook. Check this out. Every year you will hear us say, this year we're dealing with El Nino, which basically brings a slightly wetter than average winter, or La Nina, slightly drier than average winter. But this year, we're actually dealing with none of the above.
I think when you average out December, January, and February, we're probably going to be warmer than what the average temperature is, even though there might be a cold spell or two mixed in. Precipitation's tough. We usually like to rely on the presence of an El Nino or La Nina to give us some guidance as to whether we think it's going to be wetter than normal or drier than normal. Every now and then we get a year when neither one of those are at play. That's this year.
So the best way to look at this is by looking at climatology, the history of weather, looking at what is normal for us. So let's go ahead and dive into what is normal for Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's Day to get an idea of what to expect this year.
Normally, we get a couple of inches of snow in the winter.
Climatologically speaking, we have seen some snow for the holidays. Take Thanksgiving, for example. The biggest snowfall came close to Turkey Day in 2007 when we registered 7.7 inches of snow. We also came close to a white Christmas in 2015 when we got hit with 8.1 inches of snow on December 26th. Same thing for New Year's Day. We saw 7 inches of snow on December 31st in 1982.
December is one of our snowiest months around here because to get snow you still have to have the moisture. And we usually still have a little leftover moisture intrusion from the south on into December, and we're getting cold enough to see some snow.
Once we start hitting January through early February, we see colder air, which doesn't hold much moisture, so snow chances begin to decrease. But that's not to say we rule out those snow chances.
We tend to get our big snows either early in the winter season or, believe it or not, late. Some of our heaviest snows have occurred in April.
Knowing some of this climatology in El Paso gives meteorologists a better idea of what we could possibly expect in terms of snow for the winter seasons.
I don't know when that snow is going to fall, but I'm optimistic that we will at least see some snow this winter.
So speaking of climatology, meteorologists at the National Weather Service say there is one big sign that we could possibly see some snow. Even though the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration says we are in for a warmer than average winter, there is a particular pattern meteorologists are keeping a very close eye on.
It's been a few years since our last big snow in El Paso, so people should remember that every 5 or 7 years or so we can get a fairly large snowstorm.
Rogach says we are due for a big snow, whether it be this year or next, according to climatology. Of course, we do need to see all the right ingredients in place to see snow this year. But what about a white Christmas in 2019? Do you think that we could potentially have a white Christmas?
Well, odds are against it.
So there you have it. Snow isn't looking too promising for Christmas Day. Well, thank you so much for joining me in the Chill Out as we learned a little more about El Paso's winter months. A big shout out to our editor Andrew Esparza and our photographer Johnny Munoz for helping put this special together, and of course our partners at the National Weather Service for providing us so much information. Until next time.